Daniel sat alone in his workshop. The night outside dark and silent. The room smelled of old wires, hot metal, and burned circuits for weeks. He had been working on a strange device, something he found in the ruins of an old science lab. He did not fully understand it, but his heart told him it was not from Earth. It had glowing panels, strange symbols, and a smooth crystal core that pulsed like a living heart. Daniel wanted answers. He wanted to know if humans were really alone. Maybe this device could speak. Maybe it could open a window to another world. So he stayed up late, day after day, fixing it, studying it, pressing buttons he did not understand. But tonight felt different. The air around him was heavy. Like the moment before a storm, the crystal glowed brighter than ever, filling the room with a cold blue light. Daniel's hands trembled as he adjusted the power. One more turn, he whispered to himself. Just one more, the crystal flashed. A sudden wave of energy hit the walls. Shaking the room, Daniel stumbled back. Covering his face, the workshop lights exploded, sparks falling like angry fireflies, and then silence in the center of the room. Inside a cage of pure light stood a figure. Daniel froze, his heart racing in his chest. It was not human. The figure was tall, slim, and covered in pale silver skin that shimmered under the glow. Her hair floated softly, as if the air itself carried it. Her eyes were wide, glowing faintly with fear. She pressed her hands against the cage, trembling, her voice breaking into strange sounds. Daniel's mouth went dry. He never meant for this to happen. He had wanted knowledge, maybe proof of life, but not this, not a living being trapped in front of him. The woman looked at him like a cornered animal. Her breathing was fast, her body shaking, her lips moving in words he did not know. Daniel stepped forward slowly, his hands open to show he carried no weapon. I don't want to hurt you," he whispered, his voice shaking, but she did not understand. She pressed harder against the glowing walls of her prison, her eyes wet with fear. The light around the cage crackled, sending small sparks of energy into the air. For a long moment, neither moved. Daniel's mind spun. What had he done? He trapped her, but it was an accident. Would she believe him? Would she even survive in this place? Her eyes locked on his. She was terrified. But there was something else there too. A question. A silent plea. Daniel felt it deep inside, as if her fear reached into his chest. He wanted to tell her everything, but how could he? He looked at the controls of the machine, the glowing crystal, the levers, the strange symbols. He was scared to touch anything. What if it killed her? What if it killed him? The alien woman whispered something again, her voice soft and broken. It was not English, not any language Daniel knew, but he could feel the meaning. She was begging him. Her eyes shimmered with tears, her body trembling as if she expected pain. Daniel's heart ached. He took a deep breath. "I didn't mean this," he said, his voice stronger now. "You are safe. I promise," even though he knew she could not understand his words. His tone carried his intent. Slowly, Daniel moved closer. Step by step, the cage hummed louder. Reacting to his movement, she flinched back, pressing herself against the far edge. Her fear was raw, real, almost too much to bear. But Daniel stopped a few feet away, raising his hand not to touch the cage, but to show peace. His palm faced her, open, empty. He stood there in silence, letting her see that he was not her enemy. The air was heavy with tension, the kind that makes your chest tight and your breath shallow. For the first time, her trembling slowed. Her eyes studied him, cautious, unsure, but curious. It was the smallest change, but Daniel noticed, maybe, just maybe, kindness could reach across the barrier, and in that moment, Daniel knew this was not the end of his journey. It was only the beginning. He had called something from another world. Now he had to face the cost. The room was filled with silence, but it was not a calm silence. It was heavy, sharp, like the air before thunder. The alien woman stood inside the cage of light, her body shaking, her silver skin glowing faintly. Her eyes darted from corner to corner, searching for escape. Every movement was filled with fear. She looked like someone who had been hunted before, Someone who had learned that cages meant pain. Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to speak to calm her, but his words felt useless. She did not know his language. She did not trust his face. All she saw was a stranger and a prison. The cage flickered, sparks jumping like angry snakes. The alien gasped, stepping back, her hands pressed against the barrier again. But it only burned brighter. Daniel's heart pounded. He whispered to himself, "Don't be afraid. Please don't be afraid." But his voice was too soft to change anything. Her lips moved. A stream of broken sounds left her mouth, half words, half cries. Daniel froze. It wasn't random noise. It was speech. It was desperate. And even if he couldn't understand the meaning, he understood the feeling. She thought he was her enemy. For a moment, Daniel saw himself through her eyes. A man standing over strange controls. A cage holding her body. A room that smelled of metal and fire. Yes, to her, he must have looked like a captor. The thought made Daniel's stomach twist with guilt. He stepped back, raising both hands. "I won't hurt you," he said, louder this time. His voice cracked but carried something honest. The alien froze, her glowing eyes locked on him. She did not understand the words, but the tone. The tone made her hesitate. Her breathing slowed just slightly. The fear was still there, but now it mixed with doubt. Was he really a hunter? Or was he something else? Daniel lowered himself to the ground. Moving slowly, he sat cross-legged on the floor. Showing no threat, his hands stayed open on his knees. His body language calm. It was the only way he knew to show her, "I am not your enemy." Minutes passed like hours. The alien tilted her head, confused by this strange human. Why was he sitting instead of shouting? Why was he not attacking or tightening the cage? Her trembling slowed, though her eyes stayed sharp, ready for betrayal. The cage hummed. The crystal in the machine pulsed like a heartbeat. Daniel glanced at it, so unstable, so unpredictable. If it failed, it could harm her. Or worse, he bit his lip, thinking hard. How could he lower the energy without killing the machine? He looked back at her. Her eyes were not only afraid now, they were tired, like someone who had run too long, like someone who had no safe place left. Daniel's heart broke a little. This was not a monster, not an enemy. This was someone lost and terrified. And she was trapped because of his mistake. "Listen," he whispered, even though he knew she couldn't. "I don't know who you are or where you came from, but I'm sorry." His voice was soft, gentle, carrying more emotion than words. The alien blinked, her glowing eyes shimmering as if holding back tears. Her lips moved again, whispering sounds that carried pain. She pressed her forehead lightly against the barrier. Her body still trembled, but now it looked less like anger and more like despair. Daniel felt something stir inside him, a need to protect her. Even if she didn't trust him, he leaned forward, placing his hand gently on the cage. The barrier hummed, a low vibration under his palm. Across from him, she flinched, but then, slowly, she lifted her hand. Her long silver fingers touched the same spot from the other side. There was no real contact, only the glow between them. But in that moment, something shifted. Two strangers, worlds apart, trapped by fear and fate, but sharing a single gesture of fragile trust. Daniel whispered again, "You're not my prisoner." His voice shook with truth. And even if she did not understand the words, she seemed to feel them, for the first time since she appeared. Her eyes softened, the trembling slowed, the cage still held her. The danger was still real, but in that tiny moment, she did not look at him like a hunter. She looked at him like, maybe, just maybe, he was different. The night outside was silent, but both of them knew it would not stay that way for long. Something bigger was coming, and this fragile connection might be the only thing keeping them both alive. The cage hummed softly, its light casting long shadows across the workshop. Daniel sat on the floor, still watching her. Hours had passed, but neither of them had moved far. The alien woman stayed behind the barrier, her body tense, her eyes sharp. She did not trust him yet, but she had stopped trembling. That small change gave Daniel hope. His stomach growled, breaking the silence. The sound startled her. her glowing eyes flashing toward him. Daniel gave a weak smile. Embarrassed, he stood slowly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. Then he walked to the small table near the corner of the room. From a metal box, he pulled out bread and a bottle of water. The woman tilted her head, suspicious. Daniel sat back down near the cage and placed the food in front of him. He tore the bread in half, ate a piece, and chewed slowly. Then he placed the other piece on a plate and slid it closer to the glowing barrier. His actions were simple, but his eyes told the real message. This is for you. Not a trick. She stared at the bread, her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her eyes shifted from the food to Daniel's face. He nodded gently, encouraging her. At first she refused to move, but hunger is stronger than fear. Her hand finally reached out, stopping just before the barrier. The light rippled, then thinned slightly. The cage allowed the food through, like it understood her choice. Her silver fingers touched the bread carefully. She lifted it slowly, her glowing eyes still locked on Daniel. Then, with a deep breath, she took a small bite. The taste was strange to her, but it did not harm her. She chewed, swallowed, and for the first time, her shoulders relaxed just a little. Daniel smiled, relief washing over him. It wasn't much, just bread and water, but it was a start. A bridge between two beings who had no reason to trust each other. After she ate, Daniel handed her the bottle. She sniffed it, then drank carefully. The cool water seemed to ease her dry throat. Her voice, though still soft, came out again, broken words, strange sounds. She looked at him and spoke something that sounded almost like a question. Daniel didn't understand, but he nodded. Trying to show he was listening, he touched his chest and said, "Daniel." Then he pointed to her, waiting. She hesitated, confusion in her eyes. Then slowly, her lips formed a word. "Lyra," she whispered. Her voice was light, but it carried a weight of sadness. Her name was like music from another world, and now it lived inside Daniel's mind. "Lyra," he repeated softly. Her eyes widened, surprised to hear her own name from his mouth. For a brief second, her fear broke, replaced by something gentler, a spark of recognition, a flicker of trust. The cage glowed less brightly now, its hum steady but calm, almost as if it too sensed the shift between them. Daniel leaned back, exhausted. He looked at her and whispered, "You're not my prisoner." "Lyra." She didn't understand the words, but she seemed to feel them. For the first time, her body did not tremble. For the first time, her eyes did not scream only of fear. But behind that fragile peace, Daniel saw something else. Her gaze wandered to the dark window, her expression tightening. It was as if she was remembering something dangerous. A shadow passed over her glowing eyes. Daniel didn't know it yet. But Lyra was not just lost, she was running. And the thing she was running from might not be far. The night grew colder. The workshop quiet except for the soft hum of the cage. Daniel sat near the machine, his head resting on his arm. Fighting sleep, Lyra was still awake. Her glowing eyes fixed on the window. Her body was still, but her face carried a shadow deeper than fear. Daniel lifted his head, noticing her silence. She wasn't trembling anymore, but she wasn't calm either. Her eyes were watching the sky as if she expected something to arrive, something dangerous. He followed her gaze but saw only the dark night and a thin line of stars. Still, the way she stared made his skin crawl. "Lyra," he whispered, hoping the sound of her name would ease her thoughts. She turned to him slowly, as if pulled back from a memory. Daniel touched his chest again, repeating, "Daniel." Then he pointed to her. "Lyra." She gave a small nod, but her eyes softened only for a moment. Then she pressed her hand against the glowing wall and spoke. Her voice was low, broken, full of strain. Daniel leaned closer, listening. The words were strange, but her tone carried weight. She was telling him something important, something heavy. He could not understand her language, but her hands moved with her voice. She pointed to the sky, her eyes darkening. She made a shape with her fingers, sharp like claws. Then she clenched her fist and pressed it against her chest. Shuddering, Daniel's heart sank. He didn't need a translator. Her message was clear enough. She was running from someone. Something, and those who chased her were dangerous. Lyra's voice cracked as she continued. Her eyes glistened as she pressed her forehead against the cage, whispering in pain. The sound wasn't just words, it was grief. She was remembering something she had lost, someone she could never return to. Daniel's chest tightened. For the first time, he saw her not just as an alien, not just as a strange visitor. He saw her as a person carrying scars. Her silver skin and glowing eyes couldn't hide the truth. She was wounded on the inside. He whispered softly, "I'm sorry." She didn't understand the words, but when she looked at him, her eyes flickered with recognition, not of his language, but of his sorrow. She could feel it, and for a moment, their pain connected. Daniel moved to the machine, staring at the glowing crystal. He wanted to free her, but fear held him back. If he touched the wrong control, the cage might kill her. If he shut it down, maybe something worse would come through. Still, he couldn't watch her suffer like this. "Lyra," he said gently. He placed his hand on the barrier. She hesitated, then placed hers against his. This time, her touch was not trembling. It was steady, urgent. Her eyes locked on his, glowing brighter as she spoke again. This time, Daniel caught a single sound from her broken speech. A name, sharp and cold. It wasn't his name. It wasn't hers. It was theirs, the ones hunting her. Lyra shivered, pulling back. She wrapped her arms around herself, like someone bracing against a nightmare. Daniel felt the weight of her fears sink into him. If they could find her, could they find him too? Could they find Earth? The workshop seemed smaller now, the shadows deeper. Daniel realized this was bigger than an accident, bigger than curiosity. By bringing her here, by trapping her, even by mistake, he had painted a target on them both. Lyra lowered herself to the ground, her head bowed, her body trembling again. Not from him this time, but from the memory of those who wanted her. Her voice cracked one final word. Daniel didn't know its meaning, but the pain behind it chilled his blood. Silence fell, broken only by the hum of the machine. But in that silence, Daniel understood one thing. Lyra was not safe here, and soon neither was he. Morning light slipped through the cracks of the workshop roof. Dust floated in the air like tiny golden sparks. Daniel hadn't slept, his eyes heavy but his mind awake. He kept glancing at Lyra, afraid she might vanish, or worse, break. She was sitting quietly now, her silver skin glowing faintly in the sunlight. Her eyes, no longer wild with panic, followed Daniel with curiosity. She studied his movements, the way he touched tools, the way he drank water, the way he breathed. It was as if she was learning what a human truly was. Daniel noticed, and for the first time since she arrived, he felt a small smile tug at his lips. He walked slowly to the cage and placed another plate of food on the floor. Fruit this time, apples he had sliced into thin pieces. He took one, ate it in front of her, then slid the plate closer. The cage rippled again, allowing the food through. Lyra reached out, took a slice, and bit carefully. The sweetness made her eyes widen in surprise. Daniel chuckled softly. "It's good, right?" he said, even though he knew she didn't understand. Lyra chewed slowly, watching him. Her eyes softened just a little more, not all the way, but enough to show she no longer saw him as only a stranger. She pressed her hand against the glowing wall. Waiting, Daniel placed his hand on the same spot, 2 palms separated by light. But the meaning was clear. Something fragile was growing between them. After a while, Daniel decided to show her something. He picked up a small flower from the shelf, a wild one that had grown through a crack in the wall. It was simple, bright yellow, nothing special to him. But when he held it up, Lyra leaned forward, her eyes glowing with wonder. She pressed her fingers to the glass, staring at the flower as if it carried magic. Daniel carefully placed it inside the barrier. She took it gently, holding it close, her lips curved. Not quite a smile, but close, for a moment. She looked less like a prisoner and more like a traveler discovering beauty. Daniel sat back, watching her. He realized something. He wasn't just protecting her. He was learning from her. She looked at the smallest things as if they mattered. And in her gaze, even the flower seemed brighter. But as the hours passed, Daniel began to notice something else. Every time Lyra glanced at the window, her eyes darkened. Her fingers tightened around the flower, her body stiffened. It was as if the sky itself frightened her, like she expected shadows to fall from it. Daniel frowned, uneasy. He followed her gaze. But the morning sky looked normal, clear, blue, harmless, still. The way she looked at it made him wonder, were the hunters already searching? Were they closer than he realized? Lyra whispered something under her breath. Her voice soft, almost like a prayer. Daniel didn't understand. But the sadness in her tone made his chest ache. She clutched the flower as if it was the only safe thing she had left. Daniel leaned forward and whispered, "You're safe here, Lyra." His words meant little, but his tone carried weight. Lyra tilted her head, studying him. Her glowing eyes reflected something new. Not full trust, not yet, but a seed of belief. For the first time, Daniel let himself breathe. The bond was real now, fragile but real. But deep in his chest, unease grew. Because every time Lyra looked at the sky, it felt less like she was remembering the past, and more like she was waiting for it to arrive. The sun was sinking, painting the sky in red and gold. Daniel sat near the window. Tools scattered around him. Lyra was quiet, holding the little yellow flower he had given her. For a short while, the world felt calm, almost normal. But calm never lasts. The first sign came as a low hum, barely a sound. More like a vibration in the air. Daniel frowned, looking up. The lights in the workshop flickered, the machine crystal glowing brighter. Lyra's body stiffened, her glowing eyes locking on the sky. The flower slipped from her fingers, falling to the ground. Daniel's chest tightened. "Lyra, what is it?" He whispered, but he already knew. This was what she had feared. This was who she had been running from. A deep shadow crossed the sky outside. Daniel ran to the window, his heart pounding. Above the trees, shapes moved, dark, sharp, nothing human. Silent ships gliding through the clouds like predators. The hum grew louder, shaking the glass. Lyra pressed against the cage wall, her face pale with terror. Her lips moved quickly, whispering the same word again and again. Daniel couldn't understand, but her fear told him everything. "They found you," he breathed. And then he realized if they found her, they also found him. They found Earth. The workshop lights burst, sparks raining down. The crystal pulsed like a frantic heartbeat. Daniel rushed to the controls, his hands shaking. If the hunters were coming, the cage might draw them faster. He had to decide, shut it down or use it. But what if shutting it down killed her? What if using it brought more of them through? A sharp sound split the air outside, like thunder cracking open the sky. Daniel froze, staring out the window. One of the ships descended, glowing with harsh red lights. Its shadow spread across the trees like a giant claw. Lyra cried out, her voice raw with panic. She pounded her fists against the glowing barrier. Her glowing eyes were wet with desperation. She wasn't begging anymore, she was warning him. Her hunters were here, and they would not stop. Daniel's pulse roared in his ears. He grabbed a metal bar from the floor, his only weapon. His reflection in the window looked pale, terrified, but resolved. He wasn't a soldier, he wasn't a hero. But if they wanted Lyra, they would have to go through him first. The workshop shook violently as the ship landed nearby. The ground trembled, dust falling from the ceiling. A door hissed open outside. Strange figures stepped out. Tall and armored, their movements precise. Their glowing helmets scanned the area. Their voices were sharp, mechanical, cold. They were hunters. And they had come for her. Lyra's voice broke through the chaos. She shouted Daniel's name for the first time. Her tone wasn't fear, it was warning, desperate urgency. Daniel turned to her, meeting her glowing eyes through the cage. Something passed between them in that instant. A silent promise. He couldn't let them take her. Not after everything. The hunters moved closer, their heavy steps echoing outside. Daniel gripped the metal bar tighter, his hands slick with sweat. The workshop felt too small, too fragile. The night air outside felt heavy with doom. But Daniel stood his ground, because in this moment, One truth burned inside him. Lyra had trusted him, and he would not betray that trust. The door to the workshop rattled as something struck it from the outside. Dust fell, the hinges groaned, Lyra cried out again. Her hands pressed to the barrier. Daniel looked at her one last time and whispered, "I'll protect you." The door cracked, metal bending under the hunter's force. The shadows of their shapes spilled into the room. The moment of peace was over. The fight had begun. The workshop door burst open. Metal screeched as it was torn from its hinges. Cold air rushed inside, carrying the sound of heavy steps. The hunters had arrived. Tall figures in dark armor filled the doorway. Their glowing red visors scanned the room like wolves searching for prey. Their weapons hummed, sharp beams of light cutting through the dust. They did not hesitate. They moved with purpose. They had one goal: take Lyra. Inside the cage, Lyra cried out, her voice breaking. Her glowing eyes locked on Daniel. Her hands pressed against the barrier. Desperate, she wasn't begging anymore. She was telling him one thing: run. But Daniel did not move. He gripped the metal bar tighter, his body shaking but firm. Every instinct screamed at him to hide, to survive. But his heart screamed louder. He could not abandon her. The hunters stepped closer, their leader raising a hand. The cage around Lyra flickered, reacting to their presence. The crystal in the machine pulsed wildly. The entire room felt alive with danger. Daniel's mind raced. He had no real weapon, no real chance. But he had one thing the hunters did not: choice. He rushed to the controls, ignoring the hunters' shouts. His hands flew over the strange symbols. Lyra's voice screamed his name, warning him, begging him. The hunters aimed their weapons, the room glowing with deadly red light. Daniel's chest heaved as he made his decision. He slammed his hand onto the crystal. Energy surged, blinding light filling the room. The cage cracked open, its hum breaking like shattered glass. Lyra stumbled free, her body glowing brighter than ever. The hunters roared in anger, firing beams of light. Daniel swung the metal bar, knocking one weapon aside. The blast scorched the wall, sparks raining down. Another hunter lunged forward, but Lyra raised her hand. For the first time, her power broke free. A wave of light exploded from her palm, sending the hunter crashing into the wall. Daniel's eyes widened. She was not helpless, but she was still weak, still hunted, and now she was free only because of him. The leader of the hunters stepped forward. Towering, his voice was cold, sharp. He pointed at Lyra, then at Daniel. His meaning was clear: surrender her, or die. Daniel's breath came heavy. This was the moment. He could save himself by giving her up, or he could stand his ground and risk everything. He turned, meeting Lyra's glowing eyes. In them he saw fear, but also trust. Trust that he had earned, trust that now belonged to him. Daniel raised the metal bar again, his voice shaking but strong. "You'll have to go through me," he said. The hunters understood his tone, if not his words. They raised their weapons, but so did Lyra. 2 against many. But together, the crystal behind them pulsed one final time. Energy swirled, opening a rift of light. A way out. Lyra's eyes widened. Recognizing it home, she looked at Daniel. Torn, her lips moved, whispering his name. Daniel gave a faint smile. "Go," he whispered. "Be free." Tears shimmered in her glowing eyes. She didn't want to leave him, but she knew his choice had already been made. Her body glowed brighter, her power surging. She pushed Daniel back, saving him from another blast. Then she stepped into the rift. Disappearing in a flash of light, the hunters screamed in rage. The portal closed, leaving them stranded. They turned their visors toward Daniel. But what they saw in his eyes made them pause. Not fear, not weakness, but fire. Daniel stood tall, scarred by the night but unbroken. They could not take her. They could not take his choice. His kindness had changed everything. Outside, the sky was silent again. The hunters gone, the rift sealed. Daniel stood alone in the wreckage of his workshop. The flower lay on the floor, crushed but still bright. He picked it up, holding it close, and whispered her name, Lyra. The night was over, but Daniel knew his life would never be the same. because in the darkest moment he had chosen kindness, and kindness had made him stronger than fear.